Here we have this phenomenally sophisticated information processor, which is the cell. Am I really to believe that that information processing capacity simply came about by the laws of nature and random processes without a mind?
Yes.
Well,
absolutely.
I find that impossible to believe as a mathematician.
I know you do.
That there's an eternal logos, and that the universe, its laws, the capacity for mathematical description and so on, that these things are derivative, including the human mind, from the logos. That makes very much more sense to me as a scientist that it's the other way round.
Two scientists, the world's most famous atheist, Richard Dawkins, and a Christian, John Lennox, engage in an incredibly revealing discussion about what makes more sense, God or no God. What I really love about this video is that Lennox actually holds the atheist's feet to the fire and turns the tables completely so that the atheist scientist has to give an account. In the last few moments, you'll see Lennox call out the choice that we all have to make between God and no God and what exactly that means. It's incredible, but you have to wait until the last few moments to really get all of that, and you need to see the setup first. So watch this.
Well, let's go back to the level of the origins of the universe and the origin of life. Now, life, as we both know, has got this digital database. It's got a language all of its own. Now, the only thing we know of capable of producing language is mind. And yet you reject that. By definition, as an atheist, you must reject that. There's no mind behind this language.
I do reject it. When you say the only thing we know that can produce language is mind, I mean, we know that what produces human language is mind. Of course we do, because that's human language. But DNA is not human language.
Yeah, but it's very sophisticated.
It's very sophisticated, but it doesn't follow that it has to be generated by mind.
But we know of no other conceivable way of it being generated. You see, because it seems to me from the mathematical point of view, I think you said this somewhere in a different context, junk in, junk out. Here we have this phenomenally sophisticated information processor, which is the cell. Am I really to believe that that information processing capacity simply came about by the laws of nature and random processes without a mind?
Yes.
Well, absolutely. I find that impossible to believe as a mathematician.
I know you do. This is called the argument from personal incredulity.
But I could just reverse that and says your position is the argument from personal credulity.
No,
that rationality comes from irrationality, that mind comes from matter. To me, the biblical explanation in the beginning was the word, the logos. That makes perfect sense. And it makes sense of the fact that we can do science itself.
But you haven't explained where the logos came from in the first place.
Well, of course not, because the logos didn't come from anywhere.
Well then, in what sense is it an explanation?
Because the notion that you say you have to ask who created the logos, that says that you're thinking of a created God. The whole point about the God revealed in the Bible is that he was not created. He is eternal. He is the eternal logos. And I ask myself, as an inference to the best explanation, which makes more sense? That there's an eternal logos, and that the universe, its laws, the capacity for mathematical description and so on, that these things are derivative, including the human mind, from the logos. That makes very much more sense to me as a scientist that it's the other way round, when there is no explanation for the existence of the universe. Do you just believe the universe is a brute fact?
The universe is an easier brute fact to accept than a conscious creator.
Well, who made it?
It's you who insists on asking that question.
No, you asked me who made the creator. The universe created you, Richard. Who made it then?
A God is a complicated entity which requires a much more sophisticated and difficult explanation than a universe which is, according to modern physics, a very simple entity. It's a very simple beginning. It's not a negligible beginning, but it's a very simple beginning. That has got to be easier to explain than something as complicated as a God.
Okay, we're about to see Lennox call out that choice that we all have to make between God and no God and what it means. It's great. But if you think it's a cop-out to say that God doesn't need a cause or a creator, as Lennox has just said, you need to understand something. The beginning of the physical universe is the beginning of space, matter, and time, as Dawkins has elsewhere said.
Time began at the Big Bang.
Whatever serves as the cause of time can't have a beginning because only temporal things in time require a temporal beginning or ending. So it's not a cop-out to say that God has no creator or cause because that just doesn't even make sense in a timeless state. And the universe needs an explanation. It doesn't explain its own existence. It's contingent. It didn't have to exist. And so it requires an explanation, but God is in a completely different category, as Lennox said. And now we're going to see the final bit of the conversation. I think you need to see how it plays out.
I think you may have missed my question. I'm drawing a parallel. You see, you say that it's, at least, don't let me put words in your mouth, of course, because that would be unfair, but I'm getting the message that it's ridiculous for me to believe in a God who created the universe and me, because I have to ask who created God. All I'm doing is turning that question round and saying, the universe, you admit, created you because there's nothing else. Well, then who created it?
I understand you perfectly. I'm making we both of us are faced with the problem of saying, how did things start?
Yes.
I'm saying it's a hell of a lot easier to start with something simple than to start with something complex. That's what complex means.
But I don't think so. If I pick up a book called The God Delusion, it's a pretty sophisticated book. It's got lots of words in it. But actually, as I look at page 1, I don't even need to go beyond page 1, I conclude that it comes from something more complex than that book itself, namely you.
Yes, I mean, obviously complex things exist and brains exist.
Well,
and
why
brains
can
are
I not
complex.
look at the universe, the whole show, which includes
Well, I'll tell
Dawkins
you
and
why.
Lennox?
I'll tell you why. Because my brain that produced a book has an explanation in its own right. That explanation is evolution. We go back and back and back to the origin of the universe. That provides an explanation for complex brains, and complex brains produce books and museums and cars and computers. Of course we have complex things that produce other complex things. But science has an explanation for where complex brains come from in terms of simple beginnings.
I don't think it has at all. At the level of the origin of life, reading the literature, even the recent literature, the word miracle comes up probably far too often for your liking anyway, that they're just going from, say, the self-organizational properties of low-level molecules that you got in some kind of primeval situation to the phenomenal self-organizational potentialities of macromolecules. There's just no way you can get there.
Well, you're asserting that there's no way. We don't yet know what it is because there's a lot of work yet to be done. Science doesn't yet know everything. There are still gaps.
Yeah, but I'm not ruling out the fact that there's a physical side to it and so on. But it seems to me that the fact that the basic description of this ancient language, and it's a very ancient language of DNA, points much more arguably to the existence of a logos, a divine logos who started it, than the notion that it's going to be exhaustively explained in purely naturalistic terms.
So John Lennox gives us a choice, God or no God, a rational mind as the beginning of a universe that seems finely tuned for it and has a language system in our DNA and all of that, or mind from matter, a universe with no explanation. Seems like an easy choice for me. And Lennox says as a scientist, he prefers the logos. And he doesn't just leave it as some God out there somewhere. He connects it with Christianity by talking about the logos, which is the language that the Gospel of John uses to describe Jesus. You can interact with this one true God by beginning a relationship with Jesus and trusting in him today.